All right, let's dive right in. Today we're tackling a really fascinating and honestly kind of creepy idea that feels more relevant every single day. We're talking about Masahiro Mori's theory of the Uncanny Valley.
You know this feeling, right? It's that question of why some robots seem so charming and others just creep us out. Think about it. You see a robot like Wall-E and you just want to give it a hug. But then you see some early CGI, maybe from a movie like The Polar Express, and the characters, they just feel off. What is going on there?
Okay, so you'd think it would be simple. Common sense tells us that the more human-like you make something, the more we should like it. It's a straight line up, right? More human equals more likable. Seems pretty logical.
Well, back in 1970, a robotics professor named Masahiro Mori took a look at that idea and basically said, hold on, not so fast. He figured out that our emotional response to these human-like things doesn't just go up and up. No, it does something way, way stranger.
And this is it. This graph from his original essay is basically our map for this whole journey. Think of it like we're going on a hike. As we move from left to right, things get more and more human-like. And as we do, our affinity, our fondness for them is supposed to go up. But then, bam, there's this huge sudden drop. That chasm right there, that's the Uncanny Valley.
So, let's start the hike. It begins pretty nicely, actually. We start climbing up that first hill and everything's going great. The more human-like the robot gets, the more we seem to like it.
Mori gives us a couple of perfect examples for this first part of the climb. First, you've got an industrial robot arm, the kind you see in a car factory. It's useful for sure, but it doesn't look human at all, so we don't feel much for it. Our affinity is pretty low. But then you have a toy robot. It's got a head, it's got arms and legs, it's clearly designed to look like a little person, and kids love it. It's charming. Our affinity is high.
And if we look at our map, you can see exactly where they land. The industrial robot is way down there at the start of our journey. But that cute toy robot, it's taken us way, way up to the top of that first comfortable peak of affection. So far, so good.
But this is where our pleasant hike takes a very sharp turn. Because right after we hit that comfortable peak, the path just completely falls out from under us. We are about to plunge straight down into some seriously unsettling territory.
And here's the absolute key to the whole thing. The problem isn't that something isn't human enough. The problem is when it gets too close. It's when it's almost perfect, but with a few tiny flaws. That's what triggers this deep sense of revulsion in us.
Mori's own example here is just, wow, it's perfectly creepy. He talks about a very realistic prosthetic hand. You glance at it and it looks real. It has wrinkles, veins, even fingerprints. But then you shake it, and he describes being startled during a handshake by its limp, boneless grip together with its texture and coldness. That feeling right there, that deep instinctive shudder, that is the Uncanny Valley.
And boom, look where that lands us on the graph. The prosthetic hand doesn't just cause a small dip. No, it sends us plummeting to the absolute bottom of the valley. It's so human-like, and that's precisely why it's so deeply eerie to us.
Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, it does. Mori realized there's another ingredient you can add to make this whole experience even more terrifying: movement. So check this out. Movement completely changes the game. See this second graph? Mori shows that when things start to move, our reactions get amplified. The things we like even more. The peaks get higher. But the things that creep us out? Oh man, they become so much worse. The valley gets way, way deeper.
Mori's example for this was a myoelectric hand, which uses muscle signals from a person's arm to move the fingers. So now just imagine that cold, limp, almost real hand, but now it's moving by itself. The uncanny feeling just skyrockets. Mori put it perfectly. If a woman were to shake that hand in the dark, she would assuredly shriek.
And this isn't just about hands. Think about the face. We see this in video games all the time, right? When a character's eyes don't quite move right, or their smile is just a little too slow. Back at the 1970 World's Fair, Mori saw a robot that was supposed to smile. But the engineers found that if the timing was even a little bit off, it didn't look happy at all. It looked sinister. It looked creepy. A perfect plunge right into the valley. Okay, so if you're a designer, an animator, a roboticist, this valley is like a nightmare you want to avoid at all costs. So how do you get out? Well, Mori suggested a very specific escape route. And it's not about pushing forward to the other side. It's about pulling back. And this is his core piece of advice. He says, don't even try to make something perfectly realistic. Don't take that risk. Instead, you should deliberately design something that is clearly, obviously, not human.
So really, it's a choice between two paths. You have the risky path, where you try to make it all the way across that treacherous valley to achieve perfect realism. A lot of CGI artists have gotten lost down there. But then there's the safe path. Mori says you should just aim for the top of that first friendly peak. Think about Pixar characters. We love them, they're incredibly expressive, but nobody would ever mistake them for a real human. They are deliberately stylized.
This wooden hand is a fantastic example of what he means. It's beautiful, it's artful, but it is not trying to fool you for 1 second. It's obviously made of wood, it doesn't have skin texture or fingerprints, and because it's not pretending to be something it's not, we don't feel that creepy sensation. We can just appreciate it for the beautiful object it is. It's sitting comfortably on top of that first safe peak.
But all of this leads to a much, much deeper question. I mean, why do we even have this uncanny valley built into us? Why are we seemingly hardwired to have this feeling of revulsion? Mori had a final, pretty chilling theory about that.
Look back at that graph for things in motion. A healthy, living person is right at the top of that second peak, the highest point of affinity. But Mori points out what happens when we die. We become still, our skin becomes pale and cold. In his model, death is literally a movement from the highest peak of life, plunging straight down into the deepest part of the uncanny valley.
So his final thought was this: maybe this feeling isn't some weird quirk. Maybe it's an alarm bell, a deep primal survival instinct that's there to protect us. That gut feeling of, whoa, stay away, is our brain warning us about potential dangers. Things that look almost human but aren't. Things like corpses, which carry disease, or maybe even members of a different, potentially threatening species. And that kind of leaves us with one last, big thought to chew on. If that gut reaction we have to a slightly off android is tapping into the exact same ancient survival program that makes us recoil from death itself, well, what does that really tell us about the very nature of being human?